I hope you are up to something different today because I'm trying a different format that is still going to be going into my knitting adventures series, but I'm trying something a bit different. So hello everyone. Welcome or welcome back to my very small place on the internet where I talk about my knitting adventures, my knitting life, and I have different playlists for different subjects. Today it's not going to be a regular episode about my knitting adventures, the type you can see everywhere else where we talk about our projects, our finished objects and everything. I am going to be talking about something else and I will be attempting to be knitting along what I'm talking. So I won't be talking about my project. Yara's border is finished. I won't be talking about my gallant sweater. I'm still working on my sleeve and I will try to knit for a bit on my sock. And if me talking about a subject that is quite deep into my knitting practice is of some interest to you, please stay tuned. Okay, so we won't start without talking about what I am wearing anyway. And this is not what I was wearing today. But last time I had said I was going to wear it. So I came back home, it's quite late. The weather is horrible. There was a bit of sun when I just started to record. We've had downpouring rain. I had my raincoat, I had my rain boots, I had the cover on my backpack for it not to be soaking at the seams. It was such a day, and weather forecast is not telling us that summer is going to be coming in July, so we'll see. So anyway, I was not wearing that one, and I told you last time I was going to be wearing it, and because I haven't been wearing it in quite a long time. It's, let me read because the title is a bit long, the Simple Summer Tweed Top Down V-neck. Simple Summer Tweed Top Down V-neck by Heidi Kermeyer, and it's a free pattern. Her pattern has long sleeves and it's a bit longer. I knit this one in a cotton that my mother gave me when she got rid of all of her yarny stash. Most of her yarny stash is acrylic and not very good. This is a burnout cotton. I'm not sure it still exists. I will link it down below. And not the color of my choice. But I liked knitting it. It was not difficult to be knitting. I did use some wooden needles to be a bit easier on my hands. And it was an enjoyable knit. It's a bit shorter than the one that Heidi Kermeyer, the sample from, or the pattern from Heidi Kermeyer, and I made short sleeves. Very easy to be taken care of. You throw it in the washing machine. You lay it out so for it to dry out, and it's just fine. So I was wearing another sweater with my jacket because it was so rainy. My, oh my, when are we going to be seeing a bit of sun? And the sun is going away. I haven't checked the weather report so far, but they were scheduling heavy storms and heavy thunderstorms a bit south of us, so I don't know what happened today. I was for part of the day at, I'm not sure how to say that, pre-visits to the hospital for my surgery this September, and I had to switch locations within the hospital because there are all lot of them in the same building, and I was thinking I'm going to be completely wet. Fortunately, I managed, as we say in France, to slide between the drops and I did not get too wet. But anyway, a horrible weather, and I think a brighter color perfectly fits that horrible weather. Okay, so I don't know if I will manage to be knitting while I'm talking to you. I'm not in my usual setup where I knit, but the backdrop and everything is not, at least to my opinion, good enough for video recording. I'm some kind of hoping that my eldest son will move out someday, all of his furniture from his bedroom, and I will repurpose that bedroom for a knitting room. For now, that's not the case. So I'm still in my regular knitting spot, on my regular filming spot in my kitchen, and I'm sitting on my chair that is not that comfortable to be sitting on to be knitting, but I'll try to be knitting. And it's not quite the perfect location and situation. It's not quite the perfect situation to be talking about that. But what I want to be talking about, and please take some of your knitting and maybe we can be knitting together while I'm talking, is how knitting is part of my, I would say, well-being. At first I wanted to be saying, as many people have said, knitting is my therapy, but I think it's too much of a clickbait type of title, and it's really too much to say. It's not my therapy. I went through therapy at some point. I went through therapy for a very long time, over 10 years, with a very traditional therapist, at least as we have in France. The tradition is more towards Jung theories and Freudian theories, and the kind of people you sit there or you lie down on the couch and you are talking to. And I have to say, therapy saved my life. I was not at all, my life was not in danger. Don't be thinking that, not at all, never, ever. But at least therapy gave me my life back to me and helped me go through part of some of my childhood trauma, and it helped me go through my husband very suddenly dying when my kids were very young, and it helped me go through at least the first years of that mourning and taking care of my kids all alone. So knitting was not part of my life at this point. Just to be, I have already talked about it. I will link the 100th episode where I was answering your question so that you can get to know me a bit better if you don't already, and know my cats a bit better too. And knitting has not been, so I'm 62. I've been knitting since I'm 5 or 6 years old. My great-grandmother told me, and I got to be dressing my dolls first, and then when I was a teenager, I was dressing myself. I was knitting garments for myself. So we were in the 70s, right? And then I continued to be knitting when I was at the university, even though it was not when I was a young adult, even though it was not at all something that people my age would do. But I was knitting all of my sweaters. I was knitting most of my jackets and stuff like that. And I was knitting scarves because, at least in France at that time, shawls were not a big thing. And I was knitting flat with straight needles. And I had no idea at the time that circular needles and circular knittings and top-down sweaters could be a thing. So I went to be knitting everything I was wearing, and also for my husband and other people, up to the moment my first child was born. Okay, sorry, I had forgotten to prevent my computer to go to sleep because it cuts the recording. So anyway, when I was pregnant with my first kid, my first son, I did knit everything for him, all of his wardrobe. I did make covers. I did make all of his bed sheets, not knitting. I did make all of the kind of clothes, I'm not sure how it's called, where they can be in bed, so they are in kind of a wrapped in kind of a cocoon. I would say like it's like a cocoon, and so they don't get tangled up everywhere with all the sheets and everything. So I did made most of his wardrobe, and people offered me a lot of things too. So okay, when my second child was born, he first had to use everything I had made for his older brother, and I made a few things for him. When my third child was born, I had no time to make anything for him. We were having two younger ones. When my third child was born, the eldest one was 6 and the second one was 2.5. So no time to be doing anything, no time to go through all of the pictures, no time for nothing. And I continued to be knitting a bit after that, but almost nothing, because 3 young kids, that was a lot already, and a full-time job. So I sort of left knitting on the wayside. What happened is that if we fast forward, I was still doing things here and there, buying the mohair in the mohair farm in the Pyrenees when I was going there, and I did knit some kind of shrug and easy things. A big cover, a big blanket in mohair and stuff like that. What happened if we move forward to 2018, I was extremely stressed at work, and I kind of burned out at the time. And I was a vice president. I was having too many projects that I was in charge of, and I could not go and do them, each and every one of them, properly, or at least as I wanted them to be done, and I burned out. When I burned out, so I was for 2 weeks out of work on sick leave, and that was not enough, but there was the Christmas break just after that. So I basically was about 4 weeks out of work before I went back to work. And I knew that beforehand, and I knew I could not be coming back to work after Christmas break. So what I did, I got helped. I got helped by my medical doctor, by a psychologist, because my therapist was retired at the time. And I took back knitting because at some point, the only thing I could do in one day was knit a row. So I knit a scarf, I still have it. A very simple one that I whipped it up myself on my own. I knit a scarf with yarn that I found in a store, where an arts and craft store that was closing and was selling everything. I went there and there was some kind of yarn there. And all I could do is knit one row per day. And what I did is tell myself, you have succeeded into knitting one row. Today was a good day, and we'll knit again tomorrow. And in a couple days, I ended up knitting 10 centimeters, and I got back on tracks into telling myself that I was worth doing something, because what burned me out when I was burned out is that because every part of my working life was suffering because there were too many projects I was in charge of. I was not able to complete or to fulfill or to take care of everyone. People were depending on my actions and my decisions and stuff like that, but I had no time to sit back and say, okay, you told me this, you told me that, you told me that, let's meet, find the middle way, and go for it. There were too many projects going on and too many people waiting for me, and I was so conscious of that I completely exploded in the plane flight. So that's also a French saying. So anyway, so my reason to burn out was thinking I was not able to be working and I was not able to be doing anything good, anything right ever. So knitting took me out of that. And at this time, when I was out of work, I knit that scarf and I was kind of looking for some patterns because we have a couple stores that are main brands, French brands stores. The yarn is not that great, the patterns are not that great, a little bit old school and stuff like that. So I was thinking, okay, we have internet, let's see what internet has to offer to me. And I discovered Ravelry, and it was a big rabbit hole from there. So I started to get patterns and I started to buy yarn online and I started to learn about all these yarn places and everything, the YouTube video, the YouTube channels where people are talking about their knitting and everything. I discovered all of that in 2018 and 2019. And I started to be knitting more like the way people are knitting right now. And knitting took me out of the very dark place where I was. So this is why I wanted to say that it is part of my therapy. And this is also why when I finish and I end up a video, I have these good wishes telling you to try to place joy and happiness into your knitting, because basically this is what I did. I intentionally knitted 1 row per day, thinking about what I was doing, focusing about my knitting so that I could not be focusing on something else, which were mainly bad thoughts at the time. And I would manage to do something, to fulfill, to finish something that day. Once I had understood that I could use my knitting to be part of my therapy, part of my well-being, it also changed my life, because there are, for me at least, there are mainly 2 different types of situations. The first type of situation is I am focusing on something, so I need an easy knit. For example, right now I'm talking to you. I can be knitting a very complicated lace pattern where I need to read or color work, where I need to read the chart and look at what I'm doing. So right now it's 2x2, I can knit and talk to you and have a little eye on my knitting and stuff like that, but this knitting is mindless. That's what I call a mindless knitting. That means my hands can be busy and my mind can be somewhere else. But my knitting is still grounding me into today, into the reality. This is how I knit when I want to be following some kind of series that I like. This is how I do and how I knit when I have online meetings where I'm not, or I'm able to turn off my camera. Knitting at work is not that well known and accepted for now in France. So I'm not knitting at work. And this is what I can be doing if I want to be knitting 1 row or 2 rows because I don't have more time. A mindless knit, something that my hands know how to do without having my mind and my eyes always on what I'm doing, always on what I'm knitting. The second way I use knitting in my well-being or therapy, I'm not sure how I'm going to be naming this video, because if I name it knitting in my therapy or knitting is my therapy, I know it will bring more people here. But in the same time, it's not really what it is, so I would maybe be lying and choosing a clickbait title. Anyway, the second way my knitting can be also into my well-being, part of my well-being and part of my therapy, is when I knit a complicated pattern to me, or when I knit some part of a project that require a lot of my attention. This type of knitting I cannot do if my mind is bubbling and bubbling and bubbling. I need something mindless in that case. But when I have a very complicated pattern, I can put some music on, not something that I need to watch, not a video or not news or something else. Some music, and I listen to a lot of music. I hope I will be able to get back to my train of thoughts because my mother called, and so I'm filming with my phone. I answered with my watch. Thank you, Mr. Apple. But anyway, I'm a bit off of my train of thoughts right now. So I think I was talking about more difficult or more complicated or more challenging or more demanding patterns requiring more attention, how I was using them. So I put some music so that I can concentrate on my knitting, and I do concentrate on knitting. That means that helps me focus my mind on something else than what is currently disturbing me or worrying me or making me stressed out or something like that. And when I can manage to do that, it is really therapeutic to me, because for the time I'm knitting, I'm not thinking about something else. I'm listening to music I like, or I'm listening to new music I want to discover. So sometimes I don't like it and I just change it or look for something else. But it is a quality time for me. A mindless knit in front of some kind of show or videos or something else, it's less of a quality time to me, than a very demanding project with very good music that I like. So I concentrate my mind on what I am doing, and this helps me push back all the disturbing or the unhappy thoughts. Only for that moment, of course. And as I've already said, I mainly knit at night and during the weekend because the rest of the day I'm working. And if I go to bed after such a session, knitting session, it's not a therapy session, but I call it a session because it's kind of the same thing. Or it has the same happiness effect on me, at least. If I go to bed after a knitting session where I did manage to work on a complicated project, I did manage to go forward, move forward, add some more rows or add something to my project, listening to music I like, when I go to bed, I have a more, my sleep is of a better quality than if I do what I've been doing recently because of all the political situation in France. being glued to the news and seeing what's happening, because it's been happening a lot, and things that were so ridiculous. The way people managed to make alliances, that was good, but other alliances that were so not, nobody could have foreseen what happened in France in the last 2 months. No one, no one, no one could imagine what has been happening. And the outcome, because last round of the elections was last Sunday and we are on a Tuesday. So nobody could have anticipated what happened. And it was such a turmoil. And the outcome of the elections could be changing so much the world I'm living in and I have chosen. Because I used to live in the United States. I've been there for 4 years. I could have stayed in the US. And what made me come back to France is my willing to be raising my kids here. I'm not going to be elaborating because, the US, France, whatever, it was my choice. I wanted to raise my kids into my type of society. Let's put it that way, where I don't have to save money to pull them through college or what is the university here. And, I've raised my sons alone on a single income. That is not that great because I'm a government employee in a university. I'm a teacher, a researcher. My salary is not it's not that good. But it's enough for me to be living there and pulling my 3 sons through university, which I would never have been able to be doing in some other parts of the world. Of course, I did not know what was happening, and I wanted to be coming back to my culture, I guess, and raise my kids in my culture. And I think this happens to a lot of people when they go abroad for a while or a long while, and where they can come back to their own countries. I know some people cannot come back to their own countries and their own cultures because it could be too dangerous or something, or they won't have any way to be living there. And so I understand that. But I wanted to go back to my culture and have my kids there and raise my kids. So I went back to France, and I know that my type of society helped me raise my 3 sons as a single mother and pull them through, all of them their master's degrees and one of them a PhD. So I don't think I would have been able to do that in many other places in the world. And seeing what could be changing depending on the outcome of the elections in France. How this that I chose to come back to could be changing, and changing, in my opinion, to the worse. I don't want to push my opinions, my political opinions onto you. You are entitled to think whatever you want, and but I was thinking that what was possibly coming onto us, and that may come to us at some point, was a change in society and a change in culture and a change in the place of the government and the way resources are split apart, the whole society. It was so stressful to me, so stressful, that it kept me from being able to be knitting on a more complicated project, because my mind and my attention was all over the place. So this is how I knit through Gallant's body. And I did not knit on the socks because I was focusing on Gallant. I managed anyway to knit on Yara. Yara is more demanding, but I have to say that once you understand the charts, once you understand how Yara's color work is going, it's slip stitches, is mosaic knitting. So once you see the rhythm, and once you have all of your stitch markers to keep you from making mistakes over more than one repeat. If you're not where you are supposed to be at the end of one repeat, there are only 20 stitches that you need to rip out and start again over. So once you do that, it was some kind of a very rhythmic knitting. And with music, it was very meditative, unexpectedly to me. Because when I look at the charts, they are very, very intimidating. I was very intimidated by two things in Yara. First, picking up over 300 or 340 stitches to make the bottom border of the shawl, and I wanted to be picking up very evenly. I did not want to end up at the end with, or the end is that way for you, at the end with, 20 centimeters and all my stitches already picked up, or I would be missing out 40 stitches, for example. So that was kind of an endeavor for me, because I had never been doing that. And the second thing that was very intimidating was the main chart in the main bottom border. And I have to say, it was extremely meditative. The rhythm helped me focusing on something. I could not be knitting on Yara and watching a show or watching TV or something. So I was putting on some music, and I would go, and at the end, one row was maybe 20 minutes, or I haven't really measured how much it was taking at the end, but I would say maybe 20 minutes. So I would try to go for 2 colors per day. That means one color back and forth, or back and forth for you, and the other color back and forth. And that would most probably be something like an hour and a half or 2 hours of knitting. And when I did manage to do that, some days I could not manage to do that, of course. When I was able to be doing this, even though that was maybe half an inch, 1 centimeter or something, so that was not a lot visually on Yara, but it was a lot for me to be thinking, I have done 4 rows, 2 colors, 2 pieces of this huge border, and I've managed to do it without any mistakes. And I was counting in my head 2, 3, 2, 3, 3, 1, 3, 1, 3, 7, 1, 3. The repeat was always on the same scheme. And once I was counting in my head, once I was listening to the music, it was very meditative, and it was very soothing on my mind at this time, which was very troubled, and I was very worried. Being also very worried about what's happening in the fall, I will have a hip surgery, is also bringing some background stress that knitting on Yara helped me soothe, because I had already been filled up with stress up to here, and the election stories were up to here. So that's how I used Yara as part of my well-being, helping me concentrate on something that would bring me a positive outcome for my past 20, 40 minutes, hour, or hour and a half. in this world of very dark places and dark news and dark thoughts. And when I tell you, please try to place joy and happiness into your knitting because it's not coming all by itself, this is exactly what I mean. When you focus onto your knitting and you think about your knitting, that, sorry, I dropped a stitch, and you think about your knitting and you place your attention into doing positive things, and maybe also think of other people, because when you knit and then when you are listening to music, for example, when your mind is not focused on some images and stories and stuff like that, you can think of other people and think positively about them and place this positive thinking into your knitting. When you do that, you contribute to your own happiness and you create little pouches of or little periods of happiness into a day where everything else is dark and everything else is stressful. And at least for me, it helps me go through my day. It helps me go through my stress, and it helps me not ignore my stress, not ignore what's going on, because that's not the point. We are not putting our head in the sand or our heads in the bag in a bag. I'm not sure how you say in English, but we are not putting something onto our ears, something onto our eyes, and something onto our mouth, not to see and hear and say. Not at all. But at least for some period in the day, we do something positive that brings positive thoughts to us. And as I said, if you can't do it for yourself because you are in such a dark place, do it for other people. Think of other people and pick up your knitting, thinking positively about someone, sending joy into your stitches to that person, and then you progress into your knitting. So you do something, you complete something, you manage to finish something which is very, very satisfying, or you manage to do the one row you had said you were willing to be doing, and you succeed. And this is where this very long tangent and winding road I was getting to. One day, a former president, he also unexpectedly died after being my president for 2 years, and he's still my president in my heart. He told me, Isabelle, I am the one to be talking about little steps, little successes, little steps, little things. Please concentrate on making little things work. One little step at a time. This is going to be less daunting for people because your project is huge. If you present that to other people, they are going to be very afraid because it's going to be overwhelming for them. So, fraction it. Little steps, little things, little groups, with little assignments to little groups of people. It's not about students. I do that with students very readily, very easily. That's not the problem. These were my colleagues. We were into national projects. We had goals. We had time. Not many time. We had deadlines. That's what I was wanting to be saying. We had deadlines. So I was thinking I'm working with adults. They can take it. And he said, no, they can't. You go little step by little steps. And he said, I've always done that. It took me to being the president of this university. So if it got me there, it will get you through your own project with everyone. So that's what I applied, and I've been applying that. So he told me that maybe 12 years ago or something like that. And I've been doing that ever since. And he was so right, because some projects like Yara can be very intimidating. But if you fraction that, one row, half a row, a quarter of a row, you do 2 repeats. Okay, I'm going to do 2 repeats and I'm going to be stopping there. Once you get through these 2 repeats, you say, that was not that difficult. Maybe I can do one more, and maybe I can do one more. And before you know it, of course, it's going to be a lot of work. I think the main border took me, I don't know, over a month. But of course, it's going to be a lot of time. But you'll go through it, and you'll go through it with other people if this is part of your work. And you'll go through difficult things in your life, in your knitting or your work life or your personal life. If you fraction that into little steps, little projects that you complete, and so you go from success to success to success, little success to little success, that makes a bigger success, rather than facing a whole mountain of things to be doing, and you are at the foot of the mountain and you are thinking, I'm never going to be able to climb that. Never, ever. But one foot after one foot and one step after one step, you manage to go to the top. Of course, I am not talking about deep, serious depression type of things. I'm not a therapist, and this is just how to go through normal stress from everyday life. Not that if you are in a very dark place that you can't manage, please go seek help, because as I said, my therapist saved my life. And I would say therapy gave my life back to me. And I would not have been able to be doing this all by myself, because it was too deep and too difficult to be of a project or an adventure to be undertaking on my own. I needed professional guidance. For the everyday life, your knitting can be that, but not if you are on a much darker place. Go seek help. This is the only thing I can say. If you are able to, if this is something you can do. And if you know someone who's in that place, you can't be the help if you're not a professional. Ask them to get professional help. It can destroy you and this other person if you don't. So we are just talking about regular everyday life stress, and at least for me, my knitting really helps me going through that. So now please tell me, not your personal stories, of course not, but please tell me if that kind of talking when I'm knitting is something that can be of some interest to you. And because I have some other ideas of such type of videos, please tell me if this is something that you enjoy, picking up your own knitting project and knitting on it with me when I'm talking and blabbering on my life or other things like that. So please tell me if when you are knitting, if you manage to place that joy and that happiness that I usually tell you to be placing. And if now that I've kind of explained what I was meaning by that, if it makes more sense maybe, And if this is something that you can do, if you don't, you don't. I mean, you don't have to. You don't have to. It's all a matter of what helps you go through life, or the most difficult parts of of our life or your life, and how knitting can help. If it doesn't, it doesn't. If this is something else that you prefer to be doing, if you want to be going to be running for 2 hours, and this is where what brings you to your happy spot, perfect, perfect. But please tell me if that kind of video is of some interest to you, because if it doesn't, I'm not going to be bothering you with my blabbering and my strange ideas, maybe. And if it does, well, yeah, maybe we can have a conversation down below. If you have other ideas of things that you would be of some interest to you that I address, I have other ideas, I do. But maybe you can share that down below, and maybe we can, I can plan another video on that way. And in some way, what this video overall really helped me do is keep me accountable with some of my projects, like my No Buy Year. It really does help me. And when I am preparing my videos, I don't write anything. I should, but I don't. I don't have an outline. This is why sometimes also I go from tangent here to tangent there. But when I am preparing my videos in my head, what do I want to be talking about this week? It really does help me ground myself into this little channel that is a project of mine, and it helps me be more mindful of my knitting. I'm not knitting for you. No, I can't say that. But sometimes when I don't want to be knitting and just want to be on the couch playing a Sudoku and listening and watching something really stupid, I'm thinking, well, but if I don't knit for a bit, I won't have much to be talking about. And I grab my knitting and I go into that positive state of mind, rather than, couch potatoing on the couch and watching stupid things and maybe eating bad stuff. And you do help me into that. This project also helps me ground myself and undergo some more personal reflections, things I would not share with you anyway, or I would not share in public, I would say. Maybe with you personally, maybe, but maybe not in public. But that helps me also go on my own internal path, and that helps me place joy and happiness into my day, into my life, and infuse my needs with positive things. And when I wear my finished objects, I recall, sometimes not, I recall, okay, what I was doing or thinking, or when I was knitting that one, and it makes me happy. So overall, the main question is, how can we place joy? How can we be happy into this crazy world when everything crumbles, or it looks like everything is crumbling around us? So, okay, I'm not sure for how long I've been talking, because my mother has been interrupting, and I fraction my recording because sometimes the files are too big and my software crumbles them in some way. So, yes, I hope you enjoyed this time. I'm not sure how long. With me, with your knitting, maybe with your beverage. And I thank you very much for being here with me, for being part of my life, for being part of my knitting life, for the conversations we have in the comment section down below, for all the good ideas, for all the support, for all the friendship, and for being there, just being there. That's the magic of internet, the magical part of internet, and that's the magical part of life too. So I thank you very much for being here with me today, for knitting a bit with me today. You see, I've not done much, but I've done a bit. And I hope I will see you next time. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Top. I hope you are up for top. And I have several different playlists for different subjects that today it's going to be a regular, and I did need some kind of some music, and you know I listen to a lot of music. Allô?